Hello everyone, welcome to Or This. This is the video when I take some time to look back and reflect upon the scriptures in the sermon and theme for the previous Sunday. This past Sunday was the 5th Sunday after Epiphany, and the date is February 7th. The scriptures for this Sunday were from Isaiah chapter 40 verses 21 to 31. The psalm was Psalm 147 verses 1 through 11 and then verse 20c. And then the gospel was from Mark chapter 1 verses 29 through 39. I preached on the gospel from Mark because it's a story in which Jesus heals Simon's mother-in-law on the Sabbath, and he lifts her up, and the fever leaves her and she's able to start serving them. And then lots of people hear this and they start bringing all their sick of the community to Jesus to be healed. And then there's the part where Jesus gets up and goes to his deserted place to pray, and his disciples come looking for him and say people are searching for him. They probably want to continue to bring the sick to him, and he says we have to move on to the neighboring towns so that others can hear the news that Jesus comes to proclaim as well. And what literally struck me as I was reading the gospel in worship, I wrote it down right before I got to the children's message so I wouldn't forget, is this idea of how important. So, of course, there's a theme of healing going on here. And when we look at the gospel, we might be thinking more of healing as removing sickness. That might be where we place our focus. For good reason, that's understandable. It seems to be what this whole passage is about. But I talked about how illness was viewed in Jesus' day, how people who were ill or who were sick basically didn't have a place in society, so society really didn't care for them, didn't really give them any regard or any attention. And so the idea that Jesus giving attention and care and concern for people who are ill is just as important as the actual physical healing that was occurring. But it occurs to me too how important it is in the healing process, for us to feel connected to other people, for us to feel as though we have support during a time of illness. How important it is to be surrounded by a community. And it kind of took me back to the psalm. There's a phrase in the psalm that became kind of a refrain for us that we said throughout it to divide up the psalm, and the phrase was it was from verse 3 of Psalm 147. The Lord heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. So the refrain was, the Lord heals the brokenhearted, and we said that a number of times throughout the psalm. To consider that the people who are sick, it's hard enough to be sick, to experience pain or to experience sickness or to be feeling weak physically. I also included mental illness in that, so just to have confusion and to experience some difficult thoughts and things that are frightening, that's difficult enough. But then to be treated as though you don't matter, well, okay, you're sick, so you deal with that and we're going to go on with the rest of our lives. It truly can lead to being brokenhearted. And so it's really difficult to get better when you don't feel as though anybody cares. And we've heard, I think we've heard this before. We've heard this discussed, of how patients who have a supportive community, or who are part of a church community, tend to be able to deal with illnesses better than people who are kind of on their own and don't have that kind of support. And it seems that it seems like there have been efforts made to try to provide support for people who have different illnesses. Support groups where you can gather with people who are going through the same thing. Those are probably one of the main ways for somebody who might not have as much family or who might not be connected to a church community. But this is kind of where my mind went after when I was reading the gospel, of the importance of not just the body and what's going on with the body, but what's going on with the heart as well. The heart, of course, being the soul, and the soul needing that connection to others, and that feeling of love and concern, and not just from others, but also from God. And so when we're reminded, when we're sick and people are praying for us, and we're reminded of God's love for us in that moment of sickness and weakness, that strengthens our soul and brings a healing to our soul that can also maybe help us in our physical healing as well. We're finding, I think we're finding this challenging during this time of COVID, because so many people who, hospitals some aren't allowing visitors at all, some are only allowing limited visitation, or for people who are in nursing homes. This is a real struggle right now because of COVID. Families can't get in and see their loved ones and show that support. But there are still ways that we can do that through phone calls and that kind of thing. And many medical staff and nursing home staff have taken this role upon themselves then to provide that support and that strength, and that concern for those folks when nobody else is able to be present. Chaplains as well. The hospital chaplains at St. E's, at least I know, have been visiting the folks from Lord of Life every time I call. And sometimes they've already visited them before I've ever called, because they know that clergy can't get in to visit, and many are not able to have family members visit. So this gospel kind of reminded me that God intends for people who are struggling with illness, for example, to have love and concern to support them during that time. And that is just as important. It goes along with the physical, medical intervention that is going on to try to bring physical healing. But that the care for the soul is just as important as the care for the physical illness. And so friendships and family connections and prayers and connections with faith are all part. The person is a whole person. We're not just a body, but we have a soul and we have a heart. We have that's all part of who we are, and so all of that is important in the healing of our whole selves. And so that was what I was reminded of with this gospel today. So lots of other examples are kind of going through my mind, but I don't want to ramble on too much longer. But I'd be interested to hear some of your thoughts, and so please feel free to leave some reflection on my video or on the sermon for today in the comments, either on YouTube or on Facebook. And God bless you all, and take care.